Welcome, ladies. Hello, welcome, Ruth. Ines, hello. Hello, Jess. Hello, Darcy. Ladies, does anyone want to say hello to me? Say hello, Ruth. Oh, we need to unmute you. There we go.
Sorry, hello, it's been a bit.
It has been a bit, Ruth. Welcome.
Yeah,
How are you?
thank
It's
you.
been a while. What's been happening
Well,
in your life?
just been busy. Um, Lots of events I've been to and work, things that, are mandatory.
Yeah, understand.
How about you?
Oh, darling, well, we're just stepping into spring here in Australia. So I know you're stepping into fall over there. So we're the opposite. So the clocks have thrown everything out. And so that's why I thought, tonight we're going to be talking about hormones. All right. So, each week I'm going to be discussing a different fertility topic. So always remember that you can make some suggestions for me, ladies, because I'm always looking for new topics that we can discuss each week. So today and tonight it's going to be about your fertility hormones. It's a bit of a masterclass, and I just want to go through all the hormones because I have so many patients that bring me all their labs and they have no idea what these hormones mean. So I wanted to relate it all to fertility, and I want to just make sure that at the end, just stay to the end because we're going to have a lovely Q&A. I'm going to try and make the presentation short and sweet. So just, mute your microphones right now and during the presentation. Then I'll get you to, when you want to your questions, please turn on your camera. Turn on your camera so that way I can see your face and I'll address your questions in the Q&A. So I want you to stick around to the end. And let's get started. So shall we talk about hormones, ladies? They're so important. There's so many. Like if we think about the hormones in our bodies, there's about 200 different hormones in the body. Now they act like chemical messengers that help get stuff done. They act, they regulate various organ systems, and they'll regulate like your heart, your mood, when you sleep, when you wake up, your appetite, your digestion, your sex drive, how excited or relaxed you are, how motivated you feel, and of course, things like your menstrual cycle and your ability to have a baby. So each hormone in the body, it has an optimal level to maintain the hormonal balance. And all these delicately controlled hormones, they literally work together. And it's like a finely tuned orchestra. So we're going to talk about, first of all, the reproductive hormones. So this is one of the things that I usually get your labs, whether you're doing your serum blood testing or you're doing the Dutch testing, but we're looking at your reproductive hormones. They're the most important hormones when it comes to fertility. So we're going to talk about those first. So first off, is estrogen. Now, when I'm talking about estrogen, there are three types of circulating types of estrogen in the bloodstream. But for fertility, we are focusing mainly on your estradiol. This is your E2. So what it does, it helps the body prepare for, ovulation. It supports the thickening of the lining, and it just welcomes the embryo. We need it for also your cervical mucus production, and that's so that, because that's what supports the sperm motility. So I think the key point with estrogen when it comes to fertility is that it helps ensure the follicle maturation and development, the follicle growth in the ovaries, and the receptive uterine lining. When we're talking about progesterone, because I always like to, estrogen, this is the follicular phase, when we're looking at the BBT, then in the luteal phase, there's the progesterone phase. So I like to talk about estrogen and progesterone straight up because they're so important when it comes to making a baby. But if we look at progesterone, its role in fertility, it supports the lining after ovulation. Makes sense. And it's critical for early pregnancy. So how it affects fertility? Well, it stabilizes the lining. So it supports the implantation. It prevents any kind of contractions that are happening around implantation. And so, low levels can indicate there's a luteal phase defect and difficulty sustaining a pregnancy. So the key takeaway with progesterone is it's essential for preparing and maintaining the lining for pregnancy. Testosterone, now this one's interesting. We always think testosterone, it's a male hormone, right? But we have small amounts of it in as women, and it plays a big role in fertility. So I'm talking about that third off the tracks here. So it's important for women because it supports ovulation. And it supports your libido, which is super important when it comes to baby making sex. All right. So how it affects fertility. So it's supporting that follicle development, playing that role in ovulation. It helps maintain the sex drive. And, so when it's too high, which we often see in things like PCOS, it can disrupt ovulation. So it makes sense that we need to keep your testosterone levels optimal and balanced to support ovulation. Otherwise, it can impair your fertility. Your follicle stimulating hormone, your FSH, its role in fertility, it stimulates the growth of the ovarian follicles. Now, that's what contains your eggs. It helps your eggs mature, quite simply. But how it affects fertility, it's responsible for selecting that dominant follicle, right, during the early part of the menstrual cycle. And then if we've got high FSH, right, can indicate that you've got the low ovarian reserve, while the low FSH can indicate that there's problems with, follicle development. So I think the key point with your FSH, it needs to be optimal for your follicle development and ovulation. It's often related with your LH, your luteinizing hormone. So your FSH and your LH are often looked, there's a ratio of usually 1:1. We try and keep them around that ratio, but we're always looking them at your FSH in comparison to your luteinizing hormone. LH plays a critical role in triggering ovulation. That's right. It affects fertility because that's what triggers the mature egg from the ovary during the mid-cycle. All right. So we need to look at that surge. It works closely with the FSH to support that final stage of follicle development. It's the key point with your LH. It's essential for ovulation. That's the takeaway, and timing of conception. That's why when you're doing your OPKs and looking at your LH surge, if you're doing your mirror testing, which it's really important. We're always looking for that surge or the biphasic shift on your BBT chart. Your AMH, your anti-Mullerian hormone, its role in fertility, it's an indicator of the ovarian reserve. The lower the number, clearly the fewer follicles are available for ripening and potential ovulation. Now, this is what I want you to remember. It's more of a routine test if you're doing IVF, all right, okay? Because what the clinics need to do is they need to predict, how you're going to respond to your ovulation stimulating drugs. So your AMH, it's not a predictor of your egg quality. That's the biggest takeaway, because I've so many people get stressed about their AMH, and your AMH is not a predictor of your ability to get pregnant naturally through sex. Remember, we only need one egg to ovulate at a time, and we're born with 1 to 2 million eggs. We never truly run out of eggs. I don't know where this is coming from, but I hear it from all these IVF doctors, which are scaring you, right? Especially women that are trying to conceive naturally. So the key point with your AMH is that, lower, or even if you have an AMH of 0 and you're still cycling, you can conceive naturally. How good is that? The key point with AMH is that it's an IVF marker. Got it? So if you're doing IVF, it's important to know, because if your AMH is higher, that means that you will generally yield more eggs. If the marker is lower, then you're going to yield a smaller amount. So it just means that the lower AMH, they don't tend to respond so well to IVF. Prolactin. Prolactin's role in fertility, it's primarily used and it's primarily responsible for milk production, but it can influence fertility by regulating the reproductive hormone. So if you've got high prolactin, we call this hyperprolactinemia, it can disrupt ovulation. I think that's the main thing. So what does that mean? It just means that you can have irregular cycles, you can have no ovulation. So, you know, prolactin is typically, it's not, it's very low, usually in non-pregnant women, but high levels usually indicate a hormonal imbalance. So I think the key point that we need to remember with prolactin is that it can inhibit ovulation and making it more difficult to conceive. Your DHEA, now this is classified, it's a steroid hormone, but it's produced in the adrenal glands and to a lesser extent by the ovaries and the testes, but it's not directly a sex hormone, but it's a precursor to the sex hormones. So it gets very technical. So it's important. So it's not directly linked to your estrogen, your progesterone and testosterone, but it's a precursor to those hormones. I hope that makes sense, meaning that the body converts the DHEA into those sex hormones. So your DHEA naturally declines with age. But again, this is another, in fertility context, there's been such a big focus with DHEA, and I see so many women just supplementing it because they go, oh, it's going to improve my egg quality. Oh, it's going to improve my egg quality and development. But that's not how it works. Not everybody is depleted in DHEA. Some people like me it's off the chart. You know, mine is ridiculously high. So, you know, for somebody with high androgens, which is why it's really important to test your DHEA with your testosterone. All right, because we want to make sure that it's used appropriately. Now, in IVF clinics, you know, if you're undergoing IVF and you've got diminished ovarian reserve, sometimes they will do all the testing, and sometimes the supplementation has been shown to yield more higher quality eggs. All right, and you know, have better IVF outcomes. But it's just important that I think the key takeaway with your DHEA, the levels can really improve and fluctuate quickly. So you need to be retesting if you are supplementing, and you do need it, supplementing every 2 to 3 months, because things can change. So you might start off at a dose of like 50 milligrams. I don't normally go higher than 50. I find 75 can really throw things out. That's just been my experience with prescribing DHEA for my patients. I tend to sit in the sweet spot, start lower, and you can always bump it up. We want it in the optimal ranges. Again, it's too much of anything is too much. We want it, you know, too low. It's the Goldilocks zone with DHEA. You've got to test and retest every 2 to 3 months to make sure you're taking the right dose. Let's look at some of your metabolic hormones. These are your thyroid hormones in fertility. So if we're looking at your thyroid hormones, particularly we're looking at your T3, your triiodothyronine, and your T4, your thyroxine. So they're essential for regulating your metabolism, but they also play a role in the reproductive health. And how? Because they influence the function of the ovaries, of the menstrual cycle, of the overall hormonal balance. So if we look at the thyroid hormones, they help regulate the menstrual cycle. So if you've got a low functioning thyroid, low Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism, then, you know, it can cause light or absent periods. It can make, you know, you can have an ovulation, lack of ovulation and ovulation. So you can also have then an overactive thyroid, so hyperthyroidism. This can mean that, you know, sometimes there's light periods or absent periods, similarly to hypo, both of which make it difficult to conceive. Now, the high thyroid hormones, they work in tandem with the pituitary gland, and then that helps regulate the function of your FSH, your LH, your estrogen, your progesterone. You see this symphony playing out, right? So imbalances in the thyroid can then disrupt the balance of FSH, LH, estrogen, and your progesterone. We do need the thyroid hormones. We need them optimal, especially because we need it for pregnancy support. We actually need a lot for the baby, especially, you know, thyroid hormones. We need it for brain development, and we need it for the lining and supporting. So, you know, often, you know, if there are low thyroid hormones or circulating thyroid hormones, your risk of miscarriage increases. And, you know, if you look at thyroid hormones, it controls your metabolism. So it affects your overall energy. So your low energy and metabolic imbalances due to hypothyroidism can affect your ability to conceive and sustain a pregnancy. So the key point with your thyroid hormones, it's critical for maintaining ovulation, for maintaining a healthy menstrual cycle, and your overall reproductive health. Let's look at your happy hormones, because we don't talk enough about the happy hormones. So I'm going to talk about dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and your endorphins. These are your happy hormones. We all need to feel good. So if you look at dopamine, its role in fertility, this is the feel-good hormone. All right, this is, regulates your mood, your motivation, and reward. So if you are having issues with dopamine, then it can lead to stress and mood imbalances, which can interfere with ovulation and your overall reproductive health. If you've got issues with serotonin, like the role of serotonin is that it helps regulate mood, similarly to dopamine, sleep, and appetite. So it's often associated with feelings of calm and happiness. So if we look at the effect on fertility, high levels of stress and low serotonin can lead to irregular cycles and an ovulation. So it's really important that we look at the serotonin levels, because we want to help relieve any kind of stress and anxiety, which are known to negatively affect your fertility. Oxytocin, I call this, it's known as the love hormone, but I call it the God hormone. If you look at oxytocin, it's the bonding. So you've seen on Instagram and all these memes that, we need about 12 hugs a day. 8 to be, we need intimacy, physical touch. Oxytocin is released when we bond, when we have intimacy, when we hold hands. It's also released when you go through labor and when you're doing your breastfeeding. All right. So this is how you bond with your baby. So oxytocin, it promotes relaxation. It reduces stress. It creates love and connection, which is super important. So I have all my infertility patients practicing melting hugs, and we need 8 to 12. 12 optimal, 8 for just sustenance. So, if you're not getting hugs, start to have more melting hugs to release that love hormone, the God hormone. Endorphins play a natural painkiller, right? If you look at endorphins and their effect on fertility, they're natural painkillers. They're produced in response to stress or exercise. You get that feeling of euphoria. We all love that feeling. I don't know if you've done a spin class or done a brisk walk or had great sex. You feel good. It's like almost all your pains and worries go away. So if we're not getting the endorphins, we're not alleviating the stress, reducing the pain. So it just promotes that overall well-being. So high endorphins can counteract the negative effects of stress. So we need to look at that. I think the key point with the happy hormones is that, they emotionally stabilize us, they reduce the stress, and they promote the healthy environment for conception. And we've got to manage all of this. The stress hormones, I'm going to keep this brief. Just cortisol. I've spoke a lot about stress the last couple of lives, so you can rewind and go over those. But the stress hormones, primarily we're looking at cortisol and adrenaline. These are your stress hormones. Now, chronic stress, we talked about this last week, and prolonged chronic stress, it's going to impact your fertility, because cortisol is the stress hormone. It gets released in response to stress. And if it's triggered and maintained and sustained, then it's going to, create effects on the immune system. It's going to create inflammation. And adrenaline, this is your fight and flight hormone. So you can see that stress, it negatively affects your fertility in a lot of different ways. Just on the hormones, elevated cortisol leads to irregular ovulation or no ovulation. Remember, our bodies are always going to prioritize the stress and over our fertility. So if if there's elevated cortisol, the progesterone goes down. If you're stressed, your ability to make progesterone is impacted. It's really that simple. So we need to get the stress down, because progesterone is so important in that luteal phase in sustaining early pregnancy. So chronic stress has an impact on your progesterone, your estrogen, your testosterone. In men, it can lower, sperm production. and overall fertility, motility, morphology, all the parameters, volume, count, the whole gamut. It leads to luteal phase deficiency, as I mentioned. So, this can prevent the uterine lining from being fully prepared for implantation, increasing the risk of early pregnancy loss, suppressed immune function, impact on the thyroid hormones, and then you've got the behavioral aspects of stress. So this can impact your sleep, first of all, usually, then we start getting into unhealthy eating habits. You see the cascade, and then the lack of exercise, and then there we go. Stress, it's like wildfire. It's just like fire burning. We've got to address that. So now let's look at some natural ways of balancing the hormones for conception. I'm always starting, I'm going to keep the pillars really simple. I'm going to look at 4 pillars to balance your hormones. Dietary support, it's important. Exercise, stress management, and sleep hygiene. 4 things, really simple. So dietary support, ladies, what we need to do. We're focusing on a diet of whole foods, healthy fats, lean proteins, plenty of veg, all right, to support hormone production. Focus on your macros, 30% protein, 30% carbs, and around 40% fat. So if you just follow that simple formula, you can look at your plate, right? And you aim to fill your plate with, like non-starchy vegetables like broccoli and leafy greens and bell peppers. And then 1/4 of your plate with your fiber-rich carbs, the other quarter of the plate, high-quality protein. And finally, top off your plate with 1 to 2 tablespoons of healthy fat. Simple. Incorporate phytoestrogens. These are found in your flax seeds and tofu and tempeh, edamame, sesame seeds, lentils, chickpeas, alfalfa. What else? Berries, whole grains like oats. I love oats. Rye, barley, but like nuts, like walnuts, pistachios, carrots, apples, and pears. These are all phytoestrogenic foods, which, they encourage, that role in progesterone. They support and balance your estrogen levels. You can include things like your B vitamins, like your leafy greens, your whole grains, all right? Things like rice, oats, quinoa, eggs, meat and chicken, seafood, fish, nuts and seeds, legumes, avocado, and magnesium. All these things are really important for hormonal balance. If we look at the second pillar, exercise. So I want you to think about doing something regularly. So it's the thing that you can do that you like doing regularly. So if it's walking, yoga, all right, or strength training, weight training, it's so important for trying to conceive to find that thing that you love. If it's Pilates, just make sure that what you do is a regular practice. I usually say about 30 to 40 minutes a day. So walking is my favorite go-to for fertility because everyone can do that regardless of where you are in the world. All right, so think of time on feet. It's great for the mind, it's great for the spirit and the soul, and it's not excessive. I think that's the big takeaway. We want to avoid excessive exercise because that's going to lead to hormonal imbalances, and then it's going to affect your ovulation. We want to look at the stress. You see how quickly stress can get out of control. It's massive. That's why I've done these 2 lives just talking about stress management. So we've got to find a mindfulness practice, whatever that is. If it's meditation, if it's your lower diaphragmatic breathing, all right, if it's, downloading Insight Timer and following some guided meditations like Yoga Nidra, or just, 5 minutes when you wake up, 5 minutes before you go to sleep. They've got some great meditations. There's plenty of apps, plethora of apps that you can use to guide you into meditation. But if you want to just start, it can be just closing the eyes down and have a minute of silence, because that's the door into meditation, is to close the eyes and even just to observe your face, and look at your forehead from the inside looking out. It's really interesting to do that practice. Have you ever looked at your forehead with your eyes closed, looked at the tip of your nose, looked at your cheekbones, like just do a bit of a sensory overview, like a body scan with the face. That's the door into meditation. It's just to start with awareness. And then you can maybe put your hands on your belly and do some belly breathing. But we've got to find that practice of stress management. My number 1 go-to for stress management is acupuncture. I love it for this fertility process because it's shown to regulate your reproductive hormones. It reduces your stress. and it improves blood flow to the reproductive organs. So acupuncture is my number one go-to for stress management. If you haven't tried it, clearly, you need to give it a go. Sleep hygiene, the fourth pillar, I want you to aim for about 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night to support your hormones. So sleep, if sleep is an issue, this is where it's really important for us to self-reflect and look at what's showing up in our life, because things are showing up in our life to teach us what does our body need, what does our soul need. If your sleep is disrupted, then make it your focus to fix it, right? Because the sleep regulates the production of your melatonin and your cortisol, right? Which can then impact your reproductive health. So if you need to work on sleep hygiene, then, create a sleep protocol. You can go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, a dark room, wind down your digital devices after 7. Take all devices out of your room. You could play Baroque music. This is the Goldberg variations. This is classical Baroque music, which helps balance the right and left hemispheres of the brain. Remember, we're talking about orchestras today. Hormones are a symphony. So if we can start to utilize these things, so work on the sleep. The sleep is one of the biggest pillars, because if you can get that right, I'm finding so many people are dysregulated with their sleep. So work ergonomically. Are you sleeping in the right position? Sleep on your side, maybe get your hips into alignment. Make sure that you are ergonomically sleeping right. Address, if the rooms or the sheets are not right. Do we need to if you're in a hot climate, you need 300 thread count because you need to cool. If you're in a cold climate, you want 1,000 thread count. Okay, so you want to have the warmth. So all these little things, we want to fix them. If you've got anxiety, could you get a weighted blanket? They're amazing for my anxious sleepers. So, because it really holds you in and grounds you. Some supplements that we're going to go through. Now, by all means, this is a short list. Everything that I would work on if I'm working with you in fertility coaching is tailored for your specific needs. But a list of supplements that I would often regulate and to help regulate hormones, I'd be looking at, your vitamin D. I find that so important because it's involved in the regulation of hormones, including estrogen and progesterone. We need adequate levels. It improves IVF outcomes. All right, so we want to have a higher dose of your vitamin D, usually around 2,000 to 5,000 IU daily. But it's also dependent on your current vitamin D level status. But key foods for vitamin D is like, fatty fish, egg yolks, and sunlight exposure. Getting sunlight exposure. Try to take your sunglasses and your sunscreen, don't put it on before you get a little bit of sun exposure on the skin. 10 to 20 minutes a day is really good for us. We've actually stopped getting that sun exposure. We can even soul gaze into the sun and get the sun exposure that way when the sun is on the horizon. So just make sure the sun's on the horizon and you're looking at the sun when it's on the horizon. Otherwise, we'll burn the retina. Omega-3s, very important for reducing inflammation and supporting your hormones. They are as important as your prenatal, but omega-3s, these are things that help balance your hormones like your insulin, your estrogen, your progesterone. So they help improve equality and healthy ovulation. So we want around 2 to 3,000 or 1 to 3,000 milligrams of your EPA and your DHA. But key foods, fatty fish like salmon and mackerel, your flax seeds, your chia seeds, your walnuts. If I'm working with, patients that may have, insulin insensitivity, so it might be, people that have PCOS, I might add in myo-inositol. Okay, it's particularly useful. It helps with the reproductive hormones. It helps improve the ovulation and enhance the egg quality. If you don't always need it, you need to make sure that your androgens aren't low. You don't just think myo-inositol's for everybody, because I have some patients that just go, I'm just going to take myo-inositol because it's going to improve my quality. But if your androgens are low, it can make your androgens bottom out, because with PCOS, they usually have high androgens, which is why we lower the androgens and then it helps improve ovulation. So just always make sure you're just not taking things just because you saw it on Google or Instagram or TikTok. It's got to be right for you. So usually around 2,000 milligrams, 4,000 milligrams daily, 4 grams. Magnesium, I've got all my patients on this because I just find it helps balances progesterone. We all need progesterone support, but it reduces cortisol. So that's why I have everyone on magnesium for supporting your adrenal hormones, your cortisol, your stress hormones, all your hormones, your sex hormones, your happy hormones. And it helps to alleviate your menstrual cramps. All right. It helps. It's definitely one to put in the mix if you don't have that, to help balance your hormones and support them. Around 300 to 600 milligrams daily of that. It's found in your leafy greens, your nuts and seeds, your whole grains, and your legumes. If I'm looking at something like, like luteal phase issues, I might add in Vitex, chasteberry. So it's a popular herb that we will use in Chinese medicine and in this fertility niche for regulating progesterone levels and balancing out your hormones and supporting ovulation. So it's a very supportive ovulation stimulating a supplement that I would recommend, usually around 400 milligrams daily. But it's, key uses, it's used for balancing the progesterone when there's like that luteal phase deficiency or improving that regularity of the cycle. Your B vitamins, we've got B6, B12, folate. We need them for supporting estrogen, progesterone, supporting healthy ovulation. We need the folate, your B9, which is essential for preventing your neural tube defects and supporting fertility. So you just want to make sure that you're getting, if your methylated folate, around 400 to 800 micrograms of that for better absorption, especially if you have the MTHFR mutation. So it's found in all your leafy greens, your avocados, bananas, whole grains, chicken, what else? Yeah, fortified cereals. Zinc, this is important. It's important for proper egg maturation, ovulation, balancing your reproductive hormones. I find, it helps reduce oxidative stress in the ovaries and it improves fertility outcomes. So usually around 40 milligrams daily. It's normally in your PreConception multi, but if key foods with zinc is oysters, red meat, pumpkin seeds, chickpeas, and cashews. Probiotics, another one that it's super important, and we've got to look at our gut health because a healthy microbiome can help balance your estrogen levels. And, we need to get rid of circulating estrogen. All right. Often when we get estrogen dominance, it's related to gut. A dysbiosis in the gut. So, probiotics help reduce inflammation. They improve digestion of all those vital nutrients that we need for fertility. We're looking for a probiotic around 40 billion colony forming units, CFUs, for fertility. So key foods, your kimchi, your sauerkraut, your kefir, but it's your fermented foods. So you can supplement in that way. Two last things I want to talk about is CoQ10, selenium. So CoQ10, it supports the mitochondrial function. It's helpful for that energy production and cellular health. It helps improve the egg quality and ovarian function. So you can see it's a byproduct. It supports the hormones by that. And around 600 milligrams of that. Key foods are your organ meats, your fatty fish, spinach and broccoli. And lastly, your selenium. I like this because it supports your thyroid function. It's super important. So around 200 micrograms daily of that, or 2 Brazil nuts. All right, they're my favorite food sources for selenium. So some practical tips just to finish up. We want to think about supporting your stress, your mood, and your reproductive health. Mind-body practices, like I said, your deep breathing, community, connection, love and intimacy, melting hugs. Staying hydrated. I think this is one thing we forget. I'm seeing a lot of my patients like cracked lips, dry tongues, a geographical tongue that's cracks and crevices, the depletion of yin. And we need to stay hydrated for your hormones, all right, for your hormone detoxification, for your metabolism, for your quality of your cervical mucus, for reducing inflammation. So for your cellular health, it helps prevent depression, fatigue, keeps your brain sharper. So make sure, ladies, that we are hydrated. And then we just want to limit our exposure to toxins. So think about your environmental toxins, particularly the plastics. It's the phthalates, it's the candles, it's the chemicals in your makeup. the processed foods, which can all disrupt your hormones. So we want to limit toxins. I think to conclude, ladies, as we've seen, your hormones, they're key players in your fertility journey. Like an orchestra, we need it finely tuned to how produce balance and harmony, from your reproductive hormones that support ovulation to pregnancy, your metabolic hormones that drive your energy and your mood, and then your happy hormones, your stress hormones. And, we want to feel good along the way. So every hormone, it has a role to play in creating the optimal environment for conception. It lays the foundation. Just remember that your body is resilient and adaptable. And then through the right balance, that's what I love about Chinese medicine, which is why I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine. It's about homeostasis. So it's about finding the right balance with diet, finding the right balance with your lifestyle, your supplements, that you're not overtaking too many supplements, that you're managing your stress. And that way, then you can nurture your hormonal health and give your body the best chance for conception. So knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, and you have the tools. I think you're getting the tools to take charge of your hormonal balance and your fertility. Just don't forget that fertility, it's a journey. It's not a race. It's not a sprint. It's a journey. So be kind. Be kind to yourself. Listen to your body. Trust in the process. So I'm just here to support you every step of the way. Now we're going to dive into your questions and make sure you leave here feeling empowered and informed. Who's got a question for me?
Greetings, Dr. Fiona. It's me and Les.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so I have a question about how often should I check on my hormones? Because I know I did some testing in 2023. That was the last time I got tested.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say if things were out of balance then, and it's been 2023, then you are due. Yeah, I usually, when I'm working, it's like every 3 to 6 months. If we're optimizing things, and I need to check like your DHEA, or if your LH and your FSH ratio is out, then I'd be testing every 3 months. I know that sounds a lot, but when we're correcting things every 3 months, when we've got things in balance, it might be every 6 months, but generally, yeah, around the 6 month, 3 to 6 months is the answer.
Okay, yeah, because I was concerned about my progesterone and my testosterone level. That's what I want to know more about. Like, has it changed or whatever? So
Exactly.
that's
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always important to test. Make sure if you're doing your serum progesterone that you do it 5 to 7 days after ovulation. So we have the day 3 blood serum test, where we test all of your reproductive hormones. I think this is important, that the majority of your female reproductive hormones that I talked about in the start, your FSH, your LH, your E2, okay, your testosterone, all right, your DHEAs, your AMH prolactin, all these are your day 3. That's your baseline information. And then we have the day 21 blood test, which is referred to, but tell me who ovulates on day 14, not everyone. We just want to make sure if you're doing your BBT charting, just work out when you ovulate, and then you test your progesterone about 5 to 7 days after that. So if you're ovulating on day 18, you want to make sure that it's 5 to 7 days after that to get the right progesterone. Yeah, we want to make sure that will then confirm the level. And by all means, bring them here, because we always like to talk results, right? Any other questions?
Hey, Dr. Fiona, it's Jessica.
Hello, Jessica.
So I have a question.
Can you put your camera on?
So
there we go.
There.
I love it.
Okay. So how important is it for the testosterone?
Yeah.
Like, I know it's important for, like, if you're tired, if you're feeling tired, or for your libido.
Yeah.
But when it comes to pregnancy,
yeah,
is it an important hormone?
Not so much in the pregnancy, but it supports ovulation. So it's the getting pregnant that it helps with. and the sex drive. So yeah, it's relative. Yeah, it's as important as your estrogen and progesterone.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ruth, do you have a question?
Dr. Fiona. I do. It's Jamie.
Hi, Jamie. Hello, Jamie.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, okay. I was just two things. The first one, you were just talking about the testings, because I wanted to ask my doctor to do some testing, but I was trying to write it down. Like I was confused between the day 3 and the day 21 ones. Like what's the difference? What are they for?
So your reproductive hormone, we need to see what they're doing as a baseline, right? We want to see what they're doing in the early follicular phase, all right?
Okay.
Because hormones fluctuate all the time, right? If you look at estrogen,
Mhm.
it rises just before ovulation, and then it has a secondary rise in the luteal phase. We want to see it at baseline, the baseline, all right? We want to see before anything starts to happen, all right? Because they're all going to start fluctuating and doing their thing. So we get
So day 3.
day 3, yeah, day 3. It's most
Okay, and then day 21 is what?
your progesterone test. That's when you test your progesterone. That's
Oh, okay,
after
progesterone.
ovulation.
Okay. And then there was what else did I want to ask you? Oh, about for when you were talking about all the stress, like the stress and the sleep, because I've made a change recently when I saw one of my family doctors,
Right.
and sort of something that you had suggested about the magnesium, right? So I brought it up to him. So we decided for me, because I have horrible sleep, horrible sleep and high stress. And I'm sure I have a lot of the things like cortisol and stuff. But so I was put to try magnesium and melatonin. So I take 10 milligrams of the melatonin, like a couple hours before bed, which I already did. So we'll kick in soon. And then the magnesium, I take 1 tablespoon, or sometimes I take 15 or 25 or 20 milliliters. Yeah, like I take another teaspoon sometimes.
Okay.
What do you think of that?
I think that's a great combination, especially when you're regulating. Look, your dose is a high dose, so it tells me that there is high cortisol there.
Oh,
So
there's a big problem.
I can tell. Yeah, it's like normally when I'm starting out with melatonin, it's usually around 3 to 5 milligrams. So this is quite a large dose. So for those of you that are watching this,
I tried lower.
Yeah, so it's clearly, and look, melatonin is not going to work for everybody. You know, maybe like, do you find that you get anxious when you're going to sleep? What happens?
Yeah, not so much, maybe a little bit. I'm tired and I just want to go to sleep. And I'm so exhausted. Most of the time I fall asleep within a few minutes. It's
Yeah,
I wake up to go to the bathroom and I have accidents and then I'm anxious. I'm like, oh, I don't want to go back to sleep. And I have nightmares sometimes. So
yeah,
it's after I wake up like the first time or second time in the middle of the night that's more like I think about things, anxiety.
yeah. Okay. Well, if anxiety is a part of it, sometimes you can look at something like GABA. If you can titrate that a little bit, because it's like it gets you into that state of calm. Because the melatonin is going to work on your sleep-wake cycle. Because if it's been disrupted, it's going to work on that. But if you're a little bit stressed and wound up, I find GABA is so good for anxiety because you can put it under the tongue and it works. It's fast acting. So
What
for
is
my
it?
GABA, it's a neurotransmitter. And it's like your happy hormones, like your dopamine, your serotonin. Okay, so it's speak to your doctor about sourcing some GABA. You can also get it online. You
Spell
can
it.
GABA, GABA.
Okay, I wasn't
Capital
sure.
G,
Okay.
yeah. And
Okay.
you can
GABA.
try doing this because it gets you into a place of calm. I find when you have had issues with sleep for so long, there's a lot of stress about going to sleep and the anxiety.
Yeah, there is.
There's the anxiety that I'm not going to sleep because I haven't slept for so long. And you get yourself wound up into this anxious loop, and it's a cybernetic loop. And it's almost like the hamster in the wheel. GABA kind of just, it's like it relaxes you. And you can every sort of half an hour or even every 10 minutes, if the anxiety is still there, you can titrate a little bit more. All right.
Okay.
And it's wonderful when I'm kind of regulating sleep when there's an anxiety component around going to sleep. The other thing I often get my patients to do is legs up the wall. which in yoga, I'm a yoga instructor, but legs up the wall when you're elevated, or even if you can't elevate your legs vertical, just having your feet above your heart. So if you're laying in bed, put your sleeping pillows or your dressed pillows under your knees so your legs are at a right angle, and you can see that they're above my head, right? Just that alone, it aids the venous blood return back to the heart, and you can practice your lower diaphragmatic breathing. So you can put your hands on your womb space, and you can literally start to just focus on the breath, breathing in and out, letting the belly fall and rise. So, coming out of the chest. Breath control is super powerful when we're regulating that sleep-wake cycle. But I do believe that this is a good protocol for you with the melatonin and the magnesium, and maybe add in some GABA.
Okay, I'll ask him about it. I'm seeing him tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, speak to him about GABA. I did the anxiety summit, and I've been an anxious person my whole life. It's so quick. It works. It's better than Valium.
Where do you get it?
Not addictive. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it everywhere, GABA.
Okay.
Yeah, it's easily
Okay, I
sold.
never heard of it before.
And it's not addictive. It's not going to mess up your REM sleep, which is what's important in this process. So good quality sleep is really important. But yeah, speak to him about GABA.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Dr. Fiona, on that GABA, because I actually do have some.
Oh, yeah.
They accidentally sent it to me and I haven't used it yet, but do you use that at night then, or is it anytime you're feeling that anxiousness?
All of both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not something that's going to make you sleepy?
No, it's if you're anxious, in the middle of the day, you can use it for any moment in time where you're anxious. No, it doesn't make you sleepy. It's about just address it. No, it's not going to make you sleepy. No. Okay. Yeah. It's a really awesome. Yeah, it's one of my favorite go-tos. I recommend it for all my anxious patients, GABA, because you can then dose it yourself. I usually get it in the powder or the granulated kind of pharmaceutical grade, and you can put it under the tongue. Otherwise, you can put the tablets under the tongue. Any other questions? Ruth?
If everybody else is done, I just have personal questions about the DHEA.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm just really, really low. And so my doctor's trying to raise it up. What are the consequences of it being too low then?
Yeah, well, it's just like, low sex drive can affect the bone density, hair getting dry. That's why. So often when my older patients, they start using the DHEA, their hair is, especially if they're depleted, they're loving the hair growth. The skin is it's all like you start getting this youthful glowing moisture, cervical, even the cervical mucus. There's a lot of good things that can happen when you're depleted and you start taking it. So hair, skin, cervical mucus, sex drive, great things. And then it's all about, clearly as we age too, we often lose a lot of our muscle mass. So DHEA, because it's androgenic, it helps build the muscle mass, which supports the bone structure. So it's going to help you with your exercise and, growing some muscles and supporting the structure. Because I think as we age, the biggest scare we have, with the elderly is that when they fall, is that they have hip replacements, and then, it's a decline from falling. Yeah.
Right. So when she's trying to boost up my progesterone, but my estrogen's also low. I did have some problems that I wasn't sure if it were related to estrogen or not. I was using suppository, and I started having pelvic symptoms that were really painful.
Okay.
So I quit using that, and then another doctor then took over and she started with the progesterone.
Okay, so the other thing you could look at too, Ruth, is bioidentical hormones. Now they can come in a troche. They're sublingual. So you put them between the gum, and Yeah, and it goes straight into the bloodstream and it mimics your natural hormones. So they're bioidentical, meaning they're usually plant-based. So they're going to mimic your natural hormones. So this is something else you could explore instead of the suppositories, because often that's one of the side effects. It can do that.
Oh, nobody bothered to tell me that, but I was like, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah,
very
of course.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. By all means, don't be afraid of the bioidentical hormones. I think as we age, we've been so frightened to take hormones, and if they're needed, they work. I highly rate them, highly recommend them.
Yeah, because my bone density is really bad too. So
yeah, okay, yeah, something to consider. Try the troches or it's the sublingual bioidentical hormones.
Would you spell that for me?
Yeah, troche, TROCHE.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll ask about that.
Yeah. Please let me know how you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Dr. Fiona, with the DHEA, is there anything specific that we're looking for within the DHEA? I know there's like milligrams, but as far as like
normal DHEA,
a good quality.
Yeah, DHEA ranges, optimal range, normally between 90 to 180. This is micrograms per deciliter. For fertility, they like the upper echelon, they like the top end range, right? So if you're doing IVF, then they like to see it around 180 micrograms per deciliter to 300. So for optimal fertility, it's around, 90 to 180, but the normal range can be like 95 to 270. You see, the range is quite big. We want to kind of sit in the middle. So I always like around 90 to 180, ideally. And then we want to balance it with your testosterone, around 10 to 55 nanograms per deciliter.
With the testosterone, would you repeat that dose?
Yeah, 10 to 55 nanograms per deciliter. So if just say you're below, say 25, if you're below, if you're sitting around 10 and your DHEA is low, then you might be wanting to supplement the DHEA. 100%. We always test them in conjunction with each other.
And when you're testing DHEA or testosterone, are there certain days that you need to test on, or?
That doesn't matter. I just usually do them as a workup with your day 3, but you can test DHEA anytime.
Okay.
Yeah. Of your cycle.
Dr. Fiona, I was wondering if I could ask you a question going back to these, what do you call them? I don't know, the supplements, when you're talking about the selenium and the one before that. I don't know how you say the one before that, the Q10?
Yeah, Q10, CoQ10. CoQ10.
Oh, how do you spell it?
Yeah, CO, capital Q.
Okay, CO.
Yep. If we spell it out, coenzyme, COENZYME, coenzyme Q10. So it's often shortened CO, capital Q10. Does that make sense?
Okay, got it now. I couldn't quite figure it out before.
Yeah.
And then you said for that you find it in the spinach and the leafy greens?
Yep.
Is that right?
It's in the spinach, yep. In your broccoli, it's in your organ meats, your fatty fish.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Super important. CoQ10. Male and female, both of you. Around 600 milligrams daily. If you're supplementing it, it's going to improve that egg quality, the ovarian function. It works on the mitochondria. It's the energy of your cells.
That's for energy. I need that.
Yeah, energy production, cellular health. I sell it in the store. I've got a store, my Dr. Fiona Tassoni store. I will send you the link so you can buy the capsules in my store. Got 200 milligram capsules. So you take 3.
The other thing you said, the selenium, what is that for?
Selenium, it supports your thyroid function.
Okay.
Reduces your oxidative stress. So if you've got thyroid issues, you know, if you've got an underactive or overactive thyroid, then I often will recommend that. It's you know, Brazil nuts are great. So a couple of Brazil nuts a day to get your 200 micrograms of selenium. But it's also, we often use selenium. It's important for sperm motility and morphology. So I'll often use it when there are issues with the sperm. Brazil nuts are my favorite source of it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, ladies, I think that's a wrap. Is that last call out? Last call out for questions. We've had some good questions today, ladies. Always a pleasure to see you all. All right, I'm going to love and leave you. I'm going to see you again next week. We're going to keep the 8 o'clock slot, 8 p.m., because the time zones are changing. So we'll keep the same time for you guys. So 8 p.m., see you same time next week. Much love.
Thank you.
All right. Peace. Have a good
Bye.
day.